AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to lie about my partner. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Clara, 25F, who is getting married in a few months. Clara and I have always had a pretty complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child of the family, and I was always the one who was more independent and less traditional. Our parents have always leaned heavily in her favor, so there's some built-up resentment there, but we've managed to maintain a civil relationship as adults. Recently, things took a turn. Clara got engaged to a guy named Mark, 27M. On the surface, he seems fine. He's charming, sociable, and they seem genuinely happy together. The problem started when Clara asked me to do something that made me feel extremely uncomfortable. About 2 months ago, she called me in a panic. She had invited a bunch of her old college friends to the wedding, including a group that I have a very strained history with. Long story short, during college, Mark had been in one of those tight-knit friend circles, and they're all incredibly judgmental and gossipy. They apparently still have some negative opinions about me. Clara, knowing this, asked me to just play along and pretend to be single at the wedding because she didn't want her friends to think I was dating someone unworthy. At first, I was shocked. I asked her if she was serious. She said, "Look, it's just for one day. Nobody will know. It's not a big deal. Just don't bring your boyfriend, and don't mention him if anyone asks." I tried to explain why this was unfair and disrespectful to my partner, Daniel, 30M, who I've been with for 5 years. He's kind, supportive, and has been part of our lives for a long time. Telling him to stay home so I could lie to Clara's friends felt wrong. She got defensive and said, "You don't get it. This is my day. I want everything perfect, and I don't want my wedding to be ruined by drama." I tried to negotiate. I suggested that maybe Daniel could attend, but stay on the periphery or just keep interactions light. She refused outright, saying that even his presence will be noticed and potentially ruin the vibe for her friends. At this point, it felt like she was asking me to choose between her wedding and being honest with my partner. I talked to Daniel about it, and he was just as upset as I was. He said he couldn't believe I would even consider pretending to be single or hiding our relationship. He reminded me that this is my life too, and that he doesn't want to be treated like a secret. After days of debating with myself, I told Clara that I couldn't comply with her request. I explained that I love her and want to support her wedding, but I cannot lie about my relationship. I offered to help in other ways, planning, helping with invites, assisting with decorations, but I wouldn't attend under the condition of lying. Clara went ballistic. She accused me of being selfish, dramatic, and ruining her special day. She said I was putting my petty principles over her happiness and that I didn't understand the social dynamics she's navigating. She even brought up the fact that our parents are disappointed in me for refusing and implied I was trying to make the wedding about myself. I tried to reason with them too. I told them that this is a request to compromise my integrity and disrespect my partner. I offered to attend as myself, being part of the wedding day without hiding anything, but apparently that was unacceptable. Now, I haven't attended the wedding, and my family is furious. Clara hasn't spoken to me since our argument, and my parents have been sending me passive-aggressive messages about how I'm letting everyone down and that I'm being overly dramatic. Some extended family members have even reached out to guilt-trip me, saying I'm making a big deal out of nothing and that weddings are complicated. You should just go with it. From my perspective, this isn't about me being difficult. I just can't lie about something so fundamental. I feel like Clara is prioritizing appearances over the relationships she claims to value. Daniel is incredibly supportive of my decision, but I can't help but feel hurt that my family seems to be turning against me for standing my ground. I'm trying to figure out if I overreacted. Should I have gone to the wedding anyway, even if it meant pretending to be single? Or was I right to protect my relationship and my integrity, even if it upset my sister and family? So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to lie about my partner. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding because of her dress code. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Sarah, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family. Top of her class, perfect social life, always praised for her achievements. I'm not the confrontational type, so I tended to stay in the background, which didn't bother me much at first. Over the years, though, the dynamic became more apparent, and honestly, it's caused a lot of tension between us. Sarah recently got engaged to a guy she's been dating for a little over a year. Their relationship has been whirlwind level fast. They moved in together 3 months after dating, got a dog, and now they're planning a wedding. The wedding itself is where things started to get tricky. She's very meticulous and particular, which I usually respect, but this time it's crossed into what I feel is unreasonable territory. About a month ago, she sent out the wedding invitations, and attached to each invitation was a separate sheet outlining her mandatory dress code. It wasn't just formal or semi-formal. She detailed exact colors, styles, lengths, and even brands that she preferred. For example, she said bridesmaids and female guests must wear knee-length or floor-length dresses in a specific shade of pastel blue, and the material had to be chiffon, silk, or satin. She also explicitly forbade any sequins, sparkles, or anything considered too casual, which included shoes. She provided links to approved shoe brands. I was taken aback. I don't usually buy designer clothes, and while I can afford something nice, the level of restriction she was imposing felt more like a uniform than a guideline. I initially tried to approach her casually about it, saying something like, "Hey, I get that you want a cohesive look, but this feels a little restrictive for guests who aren't in the bridal party." She responded with a long text about how she's dreamed of this wedding for her entire life, and how everything must be perfect, adding that anyone who attended needed to respect her vision. At first, I tried to compromise. I scoured online stores, checked out every local boutique, and even considered renting a dress, but everything that met her criteria either didn't fit or was outrageously expensive. I ended up sending her a picture of a dress that matched her specifications exactly. She replied that the dress wouldn't photograph well and suggested I choose something else. I asked her what that meant, and she said she didn't want anyone's outfit to clash with the wedding photos or video. At this point, it was becoming obvious that nothing I could pick would satisfy her. Then she dropped the final stipulation. All female guests had to wear a matching sash or ribbon in a particular pattern on their dress. This was not mentioned anywhere in the initial wedding invitations. It was an additional requirement that she had designed herself. She expected us to purchase it and sew it onto the dress ourselves. When I told her I wasn't comfortable doing that, she got defensive, accusing me of trying to make everything about me, and suggested that if I didn't comply, maybe I shouldn't attend. I've been struggling with her ultimatum for the past week. On one hand, I don't want to ruin her special day. She's my sister, and I know family gatherings can be emotional. On the other hand, I feel completely infantilized and controlled. This isn't just about dress codes anymore. It's about my autonomy. I started considering the cost, the stress, and the effort it would take to meet her exacting standards, and I realized I was beginning to resent her wedding rather than feel happy about it. Last night, I finally told her I wouldn't be attending. I explained that I couldn't in good conscience comply with the dress code and sash requirement, as it felt more like a mandate than a suggestion, and I didn't want to participate in an event where I felt my personal choice was entirely disregarded. I tried to frame it in a calm, reasonable way, emphasizing that I still loved her and wanted to celebrate her future happiness, just not in a way that compromised my own comfort and dignity. Her response was immediate and heated. She texted that I was being selfish, dramatic, and immature. She accused me of trying to steal attention away from her by making a big deal out of a simple request. She even said I had no right to judge her vision for her wedding and that my absence would be a huge disappointment to the family. My parents are divided. My mom says she understands both sides, but my dad thinks I'm overreacting and should just suck it up for one day. I've spoken to a few friends who attended weddings with strict dress codes before, and most say that while some rules are normal, Sarah's requirements feel excessive. The kicker is that she's expecting guests to essentially spend hundreds of dollars on a dress and accessories that are strictly dictated by her aesthetic, which I don't think is reasonable for an average guest. I'm genuinely torn because I don't want to escalate this into a full-blown family feud, but I also feel like giving in would make me resent my sister and the day itself. I haven't told her parents about my decision yet, and I'm worried that once they find out, they'll pressure me even more. I've spent hours trying to convince myself to attend anyway, thinking it would be for the sake of family. But every time I imagine wearing one of her approved dresses with the sash, I feel trapped and anxious. I've even considered just sending a card or gift and skipping in person, but I'm afraid that might make me look petty. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because her dress code is controlling and unreasonable. I love her and I want her to have the day of her dreams, but I also don't want to feel like I've lost my agency as a guest in order to make that happen. What I don't understand is why attending a family celebration should require me to dress in something I would never otherwise wear just to satisfy someone else's artistic vision. I know weddings are a big deal, and I know people will argue that it's her day, but at what point does "it's her day" justify imposing strict dress mandates on people who are just there to celebrate her? I really don't want to be the villain here, but I also don't want to compromise my boundaries. I'm ready to deal with backlash, and I've accepted that some family members might be upset, but I feel like this is the first time in my life I've truly stood up for myself in a situation where I felt completely controlled. So, AITA for refusing to let my roommate's girlfriend move, and even though he says it's just temporary. I, 28M, have been living with my best friend, Ethan, 29M, for about 5 years. Our apartment is a 2-bedroom, and we split rent and utilities evenly. I've always considered our place a shared sanctuary where we both respect each other's space, privacy, and routines. Things have generally been smooth, though like any roommates, we've had minor disagreements over chores and noise. A few months ago, Ethan started dating Mia, 27F. At first, I liked her. She seemed nice, polite, and respectful. They mostly hung out at her place or at his, and our apartment was only occasionally involved when we all wanted to watch movies or play games. I didn't mind this arrangement. The problems began about 6 weeks ago when Mia's lease ended abruptly because of an eviction issue. Ethan called me one night and asked if she could crash here for a couple of weeks until she figured things out. I hesitated but agreed, thinking it was temporary and we could manage. I made it clear that she needed to respect our space, follow house rules, and not overstay the initial time frame. Ethan said, "Of course she'll follow the rules. It's just temporary." The first week was tolerable. Mia was quiet, didn't leave a mess, and mostly stayed in Ethan's room. But soon, small issues started piling up. She began leaving her belongings all over the living room and kitchen, using our dishes without washing them, and she frequently invited friends over without asking. I asked Ethan to remind her of our rules, but he shrugged it off, saying she's just trying to make herself comfortable. A couple of weeks later, Mia started acting as if she lived there permanently. She reorganized the fridge, moved some of my things to different shelves without asking, and claimed a spot in the closet for her clothes. I confronted Ethan about it, saying this was crossing a boundary. He told me to relax and that it was temporary. She would be gone in a few weeks. I explained that temporary doesn't mean taking over someone else's home. The tension escalated when Mia asked if she could officially move in because she didn't want to deal with moving boxes back and forth between her old place and ours. I refused. I told Ethan that our apartment was for the two of us and that adding a third person permanently without my consent wasn't okay. Ethan argued that it was unfair, that Mia had nowhere else to go, and that I was being selfish. I tried to compromise by suggesting a defined temporary arrangement. She could stay for 2 more weeks, during which she needed to respect our space and boundaries. Ethan got angry and accused me of not supporting his relationship. He even threatened to ask his parents for a bigger apartment so Mia could stay, and implied I was forcing a wedge between him and her. Mia began treating me as an obstacle rather than a host. She criticized how I organized the kitchen, called our apartment small and cramped, and openly complained about the noise rules I'd set. One evening, She used my gaming console without permission and got frustrated when I asked her not to. Ethan laughed it off, saying I was overreacting. I felt completely disrespected and drained. I've always tried to accommodate guests and friends, but this felt different. It wasn't a casual visit. It felt like they were trying to take over my home without asking. I told Ethan that if Mia wasn't gone after the agreed temporary period, I would insist she leave, even if he got upset. Some of our mutual friends have said I'm being unreasonable and that I should just let her stay for a bit longer because it's Ethan's girlfriend. Others, who know both of us well, have said I'm justified in setting boundaries. I've considered finding alternative solutions, like helping Mia find a short-term sublet, but Ethan insists this isn't necessary and that I'm making mountains out of molehills. Last weekend, the situation came to a head. Mia was out with friends, and Ethan suggested I move some of her things out temporarily to teach her a lesson about boundaries. I refused, saying I don't want to escalate things. That evening, Ethan gave me an ultimatum: either allow Mia to move in permanently, or he would be upset with me for not being supportive. I told him that the apartment is a shared space, not a hotel, and that permanent changes require mutual agreement. Now, Ethan is giving me the cold shoulder and avoiding conversations. Mia seems to be assuming she will stay indefinitely, and I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for insisting on my home boundaries. I love Ethan as a friend and want him to be happy, but I cannot let someone disrespect my home or force a living arrangement I'm not comfortable with. Reddit: AITA for refusing to let my roommate's girlfriend move in permanently, even though he says it's just temporary and claims I'm being selfish. AITA for refusing to let my friend's dog live with me permanently after she left town unexpectedly. I, 29F, live alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I work as a graphic designer and have a strict routine that allows me to balance work, social life, and personal hobbies. I've always been responsible with pets. My childhood dog passed away a few years ago, and since then, I haven't had the time or space to commit to another full-time pet. I genuinely enjoy animals, but I know my limits. My friend, Laura, 30F, has a high-energy border collie named Max. Laura and I have known each other since college, and our friendship is strong. Max is well-behaved, but very demanding. He needs long walks, mental stimulation, and attention throughout the day. Laura works long hours, but she's always managed Max's needs herself. 2 weeks ago, Laura called me in a panic. She's been offered a temporary work assignment overseas for 6 months and had to leave almost immediately. She asked if I could take Max for a little while, assuring me it would only be temporary. I hesitated because I knew this wasn't something I could commit to long-term, but I agreed to help for 2 weeks while she figured out alternatives. I made it very clear that after that period, I couldn't keep Max permanently. The first few days were fine, but exhausting. Max is a bundle of energy, and even after hours of walks and playtime, he constantly demanded attention. I realized that taking care of him was going to disrupt my work and personal life more than I anticipated. Laura called daily, asking if everything was okay and subtly hinting that I could keep him a little longer if I wanted. I reminded her I couldn't, but she seemed disappointed. After the 2-week mark, Laura called me again and said she hadn't been able to finalize arrangements and asked if I could keep Max for a couple more weeks. I told her that my schedule and apartment weren't set up for a pet long-term and that I had other obligations that required my attention. She became upset, saying that Max needed me because she couldn't be there and that leaving him at a kennel wasn't fair. I suggested professional pet boarding or asking another friend, but she refused, saying she didn't want Max with anyone else. I tried to set firm boundaries. Max could stay temporarily, but I could not be responsible for him indefinitely. Laura got defensive, accusing me of being selfish and implying that I didn't care about Max's well-being. She even said, "I thought you loved animals. You can't just abandon him when he needs you." I explained that I never intended to abandon Max, that I was doing my best within a temporary arrangement, and that 6 months was far beyond my capacity. The situation worsened when Laura started leaving items around my apartment, including Max's toys, food, and even some of her clothing, as if to signal that he was now permanently part of my household. Max also began marking territory in my small apartment, which stressed me out further. I had to clean more frequently, adjust my routine, and spend hours exercising and training him just to prevent destructive behavior. When I reiterated that I could not keep Max permanently, Laura became emotional. She accused me of being cruel and irresponsible. She sent messages to mutual friends framing me as the villain who refused to help in a crisis, which caused some tension in my social circle. I tried explaining that I was never asked to adopt Max permanently, that I offered temporary care, and that my boundaries are about my capacity, not about my love for animals. One evening, Laura called again, crying, and said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. You're the only person I trust with him. Please just let him stay. It's only fair after all you've done." I felt guilty but stood my ground. I told her I would help research boarding options, contact reputable pet sitters, and even contribute to part of the cost if needed, but I could not take Max in permanently. She hung up angry, and we haven't spoken much since. Friends are split on this. Some say I should just make it work and keep Max to help a friend in need, while others say I'm completely justified in maintaining boundaries and protecting my mental health. I feel torn because I genuinely care about Max, but I also know that taking on a full-time pet for 6 months in my small apartment would be unsustainable and stressful. I've done everything I reasonably could to help without compromising my life, but Laura keeps framing me as selfish. So, AITA for refusing to let my friend's dog live with me permanently after she left town unexpectedly? AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after she disinvited my partner over a minor argument? This has been eating at me for months, and I honestly can't tell if I'm in the wrong or if my family is being unreasonable. I, 28F, have been with my partner, Sam, 30M, for almost 6 years. We've been living together for the past 3, and things have been really great. No major issues, solid communication, and we both prioritize our relationship over drama. My family, however, has always been a bit intense, especially when it comes to weddings and family events. So here's the situation. My cousin, Jessica, 27F, got engaged last year. She and I have been close since childhood, and I was genuinely excited for her. When she announced her wedding date, she invited me, Sam, and my younger brother. Everything was fine at first. Then about 4 months before the wedding, Sam and I went to a small family gathering at Jessica's house. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but a minor argument sparked between Sam and Jessica over something I honestly think was ridiculous. Jessica had just gotten a promotion at work and was excitedly talking about it, and Sam made a sarcastic comment, something along the lines of, "Congrats, but I guess now you'll have no excuse to skip family dinners." It wasn't malicious, just a light joke, but Jessica apparently took it personally and snapped at him, saying, "Wow, thanks for the support, really needed that." I tried to smooth things over, explaining that Sam didn't mean it that way, but she was visibly upset. She spent the rest of the evening giving him the cold shoulder and made several passive-aggressive comments. I was frustrated, but I thought this would blow over. Sam apologized, I apologized, and we left on relatively okay terms, though the tension was noticeable. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I received a group text from Jessica that said, "Hey everyone, just finalizing the guest list. I'm sorry, but Sam can't come to the wedding. I hope you understand." At first, I thought maybe it was a typo. I messaged her privately, asking for clarification, and she responded that after reconsidering her options and thinking about the atmosphere, she didn't feel comfortable having Sam there. I asked if we could talk it through or at least come to a compromise, and she said it wasn't up for discussion and that if I wanted to attend, I'd have to come without him. I was floored. I understand not everyone gets along, but this was my long-term partner, someone who has been part of my life for years. It wasn't a heated, ongoing feud. It was one offhand remark taken way too seriously. I tried reasoning, explaining that excluding him would make me uncomfortable and ruin the experience for me. Jessica's reply was essentially, "I'm sorry, but I've made my decision. Hope you enjoy the wedding if you come." I didn't respond immediately. I talked to my brother, my parents, and a few close friends. Most people said I should try to go without Sam to avoid drama, but I couldn't reconcile that in my head. It felt like being told, choose between your partner and your family, and I just couldn't do that. I told Jessica I wouldn't be attending if Sam couldn't come. Her response was to stop responding altogether, which is her usual approach when she's upset. Now the drama has exploded. My family is divided. My parents understand my decision, but are upset about the feud, saying, "It's just a wedding. Can't you set your feelings aside?" My brother thinks I overreacted and is frustrated that our cousin is effectively punishing the rest of the family because of a small argument. Some relatives have even texted me, implying I'm being immature or selfish for refusing to attend a happy occasion over a tiny misunderstanding. Meanwhile, friends have been supportive, saying I made the right choice to prioritize my relationship. The tricky part is that everyone seems to want me to take the blame or at least apologize, but I genuinely feel like I didn't do anything wrong. Sam's not even confrontational. He's just being told he isn't welcome over something that happened months ago. And the more I think about it, the more I feel like Jessica is punishing me to prove a point rather than actually dealing with any real issue. I've considered trying to meet halfway, maybe going for the ceremony and leaving before the reception, but I think that would just feel like I'm accepting her ultimatum, and I don't want to normalize that kind of behavior. Part of me worries that I'm making a big deal out of nothing, and that I'm missing out on what should be a happy, family-filled day. Another part of me feels like standing my ground is the only way to show that our relationship deserves respect. So, Reddit, AITA here? I know weddings are emotional, and I know some people might say I'm being petty by not going, but it feels deeper than that. I'm torn between wanting to support my cousin and wanting to support my partner, and I'm genuinely unsure if refusing to attend makes me the bad guy. I haven't talked to Jessica since I told her we wouldn't attend. My parents are still pressuring me, and I've been receiving subtle messages from extended family implying I'm causing unnecessary drama. But I also don't feel like I can compromise my values or relationship just to keep the peace. I really want an honest perspective. Is this really me being unreasonable, or is my cousin, and by extension, some of my family, being overdramatic? AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of his fiancée? So, this is a long one. And I need to preface it by saying that I really don't want to seem petty or dramatic, but I genuinely feel like I'm in a situation where my boundaries are being completely ignored. I'll try to lay out all the details as objectively as I can. I, 29F, have a younger brother, Jake, 26M. We were extremely close growing up. He's always been more outgoing than me, but we shared a lot of hobbies, from video games to comic books to late-night pizza runs. Over the last few years, our relationship has gotten a little complicated because of his fiancée, Kara, 25F. Jake met Kara about 3 years ago. At first, I tried really hard to be welcoming because I want my brother to be happy. Kara seemed nice at first, but over time, some things started happening that made me really uncomfortable. She's extremely controlling of Jake in ways I didn't expect. For example, he used to go on our monthly game nights, but when Kara started being part of his life, she basically demanded he stop coming because she doesn't like video games and thinks it's a waste of time. He stopped coming to things he loved because she guilt-tripped him. She's also very critical of anyone she sees as a threat to her relationship. She's criticized my clothing choices, my sense of humor, and even my living situation. On multiple occasions, she's made snide comments directly to me, sometimes in front of Jake. I usually try to laugh it off, but it started to weigh on me. The tipping point came about 6 months ago. Jake asked me to help him pick out his suit for a formal event. I offered honest advice, as he asked. Kara then proceeded to tell me I was toxic for even having opinions about her fiancé's appearance, and implied I was trying to manipulate him. It was humiliating, and Jake just nodded along instead of defending me. After that, I started limiting my interactions with both of them, mostly to texts or the occasional family event where she wasn't present. Fast forward to last month, Jake got engaged. I was initially happy for him, but as soon as Kara's family became involved, the wedding planning turned into a literal nightmare. Kara insisted on a very specific type of wedding that excluded any traditions that were important to me or my parents, even when we tried to compromise. She's also apparently requested that none of Jake's friends or anyone she doesn't approve of attend. When I found out, I was hurt, but tried to communicate that I wanted to have a role in my brother's life and the wedding. I suggested a compromise where I could attend, but not be in any official role if that made her more comfortable. That's when things got ugly. Kara told Jake that my presence at the wedding would ruin her day, and that if I attended, she wouldn't feel safe or welcome. Jake tried to negotiate with me, saying he wanted both of us to be happy, but I could see he was clearly terrified of upsetting Kara. I asked him if he would actually stand up for me, and he admitted that he probably wouldn't, which honestly broke my heart. After a lot of thinking and conversations with friends and my parents, I made the decision not to attend the wedding. I told Jake I was proud of him. I loved him, but I couldn't be around Kara in such a toxic environment. I also offered to celebrate with him privately either before or after the wedding, so he wouldn't feel completely unsupported. Of course, word got back to Kara before Jake could fully explain, and now the entire family is in an uproar. My parents are upset because they think I'm overreacting and that I should just suck it up for the sake of family unity. Some cousins have texted me saying I'm selfish and that I'm making a huge deal out of nothing. Jake hasn't fully sided with me, although he privately admitted he understands why I made my choice. I genuinely feel like attending would make me miserable and possibly escalate into a huge confrontation, and I don't want my relationship with Jake to be permanently damaged because of Kara. At the same time, I feel like the family sees this as me being petty or stubborn, and it's putting a lot of strain on everyone. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of his fiancée, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding because of his last-minute demands. I, 30F, have a younger brother, Daniel, 27M, who I've always been close to. Our parents passed away when we were young, so I've always taken on a lot of responsibility for him, and I've tried to be supportive in every way possible. I have a decent job in finance, and I've always been happy to help Daniel when he needs it. A few months ago, Daniel got engaged. When he called me to tell me, I was thrilled for him. He asked if I could help with some wedding expenses, like the venue deposit and some catering costs. I said yes. I wanted him to have a beautiful wedding, and I knew this would be a once-in-a-lifetime event for him. I never expected the level of drama that would follow. From the beginning, Daniel was extremely particular about what he wanted. He insisted on a specific venue, a very expensive caterer, and a band that cost more than what I'd spent on my own apartment. He told me that he didn't want to compromise because this was his day, and he assumed I would cover most of the extra costs. I agreed to some things because I love him and wanted him to be happy, but I set clear limits on what I could contribute. 2 months ago, Daniel started changing plans almost daily. He wanted a larger cake, additional decorations, and suddenly decided the bridesmaids' dresses had to be replaced with a more expensive designer. I reminded him that we had already set a budget and that I couldn't cover all the extra costs. He got frustrated and said I was holding him back, and that if I truly cared about him, I would find a way to pay for it. The tipping point came last week. Daniel sent me a detailed list of new items he wanted, including a photo booth, an ice sculpture, and additional florals for the tables, totaling almost $10,000 more than our agreed-upon budget. I told him I absolutely could not afford to pay for those additions, and that these were unreasonable demands given our original agreement. He exploded, saying I was selfish and not supportive of his happiness, and that I was ruining his wedding. I offered an alternative. I could help him research ways to cut costs or look for affordable alternatives, but I could not pay $10,000 on top of what I'd already committed. Daniel said that wasn't good enough, that this was family helping family, and that if I truly loved him, I would just write the check. Since then, our relationship has been tense. He hasn't spoken to me in a week, and he's been posting subtle things on social media, implying that I'm cheap and unsupportive. Our mutual friends have started weighing in, some saying I should do more because it's his wedding, and others saying I'm completely justified in setting financial boundaries. I've tried to explain to him that supporting someone doesn't mean enabling them to spend irresponsibly. I love him, but I cannot, and should not, go into debt to cover extravagant and last-minute demands. I also reminded him that a wedding is a celebration of love, not a competition to show off money or impress guests. Daniel has now told our cousin that I refuse to be part of the family, and that my attitude is selfish. It's been heartbreaking because I feel like no matter what I do, it's not enough. I've offered time, effort, planning help, and emotional support, but he seems to think love equals financial expenditure. I also have to consider my own life. I'm saving for a house, have monthly bills, and cannot realistically drop $10,000 on short notice. I've suggested he scale back the wedding to what he can afford or involve other friends or family who might want to contribute, but he refuses to compromise. I want to be there for my brother on his wedding day, but I cannot give in to unreasonable demands that would jeopardize my own financial stability. I feel guilty because he's my brother, and I don't want to hurt him, but at the same time, I cannot accept being guilt-tripped or forced into paying more than I can handle. Reddit. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's last-minute extravagant wedding demands, even though he says I'm being selfish and unsupportive of his happiness. AITA for refusing to let my husband's brother move in with us permanently after he claimed he had no other options. I, 33F, have been married to Tom, 35M, for 7 years. We own a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, and our life is fairly routine. I work full-time as a nurse. Tom runs his own small business, and we both value quiet, stability, and having our home as a space to recharge. We've always been generous, but we also have clear boundaries when it comes to household responsibilities and personal space. Tom's younger brother, Matt, 29M, has a history of being unreliable. He's been fired from multiple jobs, struggles to manage money, and has frequently asked family members for financial support. Recently, Matt's apartment lease ended unexpectedly, and he called Tom, panicked, saying he had nowhere to go. He told Tom he had no other options, and that if he didn't move in with us, he'd be homeless. Tom came to me and asked if I'd be okay with Matt staying temporarily until he got back on his feet. I said I was willing to help for a short time, maybe a week or two, on the condition that Matt respected our house rules, contributed to bills, and actively looked for a new place. Tom agreed and assured me that Matt would be out once he got back on his feet. I also made it clear that I was not comfortable with a permanent arrangement. Matt moved in, and initially it was manageable. He stayed in the spare bedroom and seemed grateful. But it quickly became apparent that temporary for Matt meant an indefinite stay. He began leaving his laundry in common areas, eating our groceries without asking, and assuming he could make major decisions in the house, like rearranging furniture or using our tools and appliances without permission. Within a week, he started asking Tom for money for bills, groceries, and even car repairs. I told both of them that I could not cover his expenses and that if he wanted to stay, he would need to contribute. Matt became defensive, saying we were being unfair and that Tom had already promised he could stay. I reminded Tom that the promise was for a short-term stay, not for taking over our house indefinitely. Tensions rose when Matt invited friends over without asking and had parties in the backyard late at night. Our neighbors complained, and I had to handle the awkward conversations while trying to maintain our reputation in the neighborhood. I told Matt multiple times that this behavior was unacceptable, but he brushed it off, saying he was just trying to make the best of a bad situation. The breaking point came when Matt announced he intended to stay permanently. He said he didn't see any reason to move out since we had a spare bedroom, and he implied that I was being selfish for not wanting to accommodate him. He also said that Tom owed him and that it was the family's responsibility to help. I explained that I was not against helping family in emergencies, but that permanently housing someone who had repeatedly shown irresponsibility was not something I could do without significant disruption to my life. Tom and Matt both became frustrated. Tom said he felt caught in the middle, torn between his brother and me, and Matt accused me of hating him and not caring about family. I offered alternatives. Matt could move into a short-term rental, find a roommate, or temporarily stay with another relative. He refused, insisting that none of those options were acceptable and that moving out would be too stressful for him. Since then, the atmosphere in our house has been tense. Matt stays in his room for the most part, but anytime we discuss moving forward, he becomes passive-aggressive or guilt-trips us. Tom seems conflicted. He agrees with me logically, but feels guilty because Matt is his brother. I've tried to explain that helping someone temporarily is one thing, but enabling him indefinitely would create ongoing stress, financial strain, and a loss of privacy for us. Friends and some family members are split. Some say we should just let Matt stay to keep the peace, while others say I'm justified in maintaining boundaries and protecting our home and mental health. I feel like I've been generous, clear about my limits from the start, and proactive in helping Matt find alternatives, but he continues to frame me as unreasonable. So, AITA for refusing to let my husband's brother move in with us permanently after he claimed he had no other options? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house after he humiliated me in front of my family? So, this all started a few months ago. I, 28F, live in a medium-sized city and own a small apartment that I absolutely love. It's cozy, well-decorated, and my personal sanctuary. I have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and we've always been close, even though our personalities are very different. She's outgoing, spontaneous, and tends to make decisions on impulse, while I'm more reserved, organized, and cautious about my personal space. Emily has been dating this guy, Mark, 27M, for about a year. From the beginning, I had some reservations. He seemed nice enough, polite on the surface, but there was something about the way he talked down to people, especially when he thought no one was watching. Emily was in love and didn't notice or didn't care, so I tried to let it slide. Fast forward to a family dinner at my apartment. I had invited my parents and Emily over for a casual Sunday meal. I spent hours prepping, cleaning, and cooking because I wanted everything to be perfect. Mark was invited as Emily's guest. At first, everything seemed normal, but then things went south fast. During dinner, I mentioned a project I was working on at my job. I'm a graphic designer, and I was excited about a major client I'd been working with for months. Mark immediately interrupted me mid-sentence, scoffing, and said, "Oh, that's cute, but I bet it's nothing compared to what I do at my job. I work in finance, and honestly, creative stuff like that is just fun hobby stuff, right?" I tried to brush it off politely, thinking maybe he was just joking, but then it got worse. My parents looked a little uncomfortable, and Emily laughed nervously, saying, "Mark, come on." But he didn't stop. He spent the rest of the dinner making these subtle yet humiliating remarks, comparing my work to his achievements, pointing out tiny mistakes in how I served the food, and even commenting on how messy my apartment was compared to his place. By the end of the night, I was completely mortified. I excused myself to the kitchen, trying to calm down, and my parents followed me. They reassured me that it wasn't my fault and that Mark was being incredibly rude. Emily, however, seemed defensive. She said, "He's just joking. You're too sensitive. I think you're overreacting." I was shocked because I wasn't sure if Emily didn't see how humiliating it was or if she just didn't want to upset him. A few days later, Emily called me asking if Mark could stay at my apartment for a weekend because their apartment was having water damage and needed repairs. She told me it would be just him for 2 nights and that she'd make sure he didn't bother me. I honestly froze. My first reaction was no. After what happened at dinner, I didn't feel comfortable having him in my home. But Emily kept pressuring me. She said I was being unfair, that she didn't understand why I was holding a grudge over a little teasing, and that Mark really didn't have anywhere else to stay. She even said, "If you really cared about me, you'd help." I tried to explain calmly that it wasn't just teasing. I told her that his behavior at dinner made me feel disrespected and humiliated in front of our parents. I also said I didn't feel comfortable opening my home to someone who has already made me feel that way. She didn't listen. She accused me of being petty, controlling, and selfish. I stood my ground and refused. Emily got visibly upset, and Mark apparently called her crying afterward, saying that I was being unreasonable and mean. Emily hasn't really spoken to me much since that conversation. Our parents are stuck in the middle. They agree with me privately, but don't want to get involved in the argument. I feel guilty because Emily is my sister, and she's clearly upset. I also don't like conflict and don't enjoy feeling like I'm blocking someone in need. But I also feel like my boundaries are completely reasonable. I shouldn't have to host someone who has openly humiliated me in my own home, even if it's my sister's boyfriend. I've tried to suggest alternatives, like she helping him find a cheap Airbnb or offering to host him in a neutral location like a hotel lobby or a friend's place. But she says none of those options are acceptable. Now I'm stuck. Emily barely talks to me. Mark seems to think I'm the villain, and I feel both validated and guilty at the same time. I don't want to burn bridges with my sister, but I also can't compromise on this. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my apartment after he humiliated me in front of my family. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she made a last-minute demand that I feel is completely unreasonable. So this is a bit of a long one, but I'll try to keep it as organized as possible. My sister, let's call her Claire, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're 4 years apart, and growing up, she was the golden child while I was sort of the wild card. Our parents were always fussing over her, and I had to fight for attention in ways that sometimes caused tension. That said, I've always tried to be there for her in big moments. I wasn't the easiest sister, but I think I've shown up when it mattered. Fast forward to adulthood. I live in a medium-sized city, own a modest but nice house, and have a stable job. Claire recently got engaged to a guy named Mark, and she's been planning a wedding for next summer. Early on, she mentioned that she wanted a relatively small, intimate ceremony with family and a few close friends. She knew I have a fairly spacious backyard and suggested that we could host it there, and I agreed under the impression that it would be casual. I've hosted plenty of parties and family events, so I didn't see a problem. She seemed thrilled. Things started to shift about 2 months ago. She told me she wanted to bring in a professional wedding planner, a full caterer, rented furniture, a tent, and all the works. I was surprised but figured, okay, maybe she's envisioning something bigger. I asked if she wanted me to host at my house, and she said yes, and that she would handle all the logistics and costs. I thought that seemed fair, and I was happy to let her use the space. Then, last week, she called me in a panic. Apparently, her planner told her that the backyard wouldn't accommodate the vision. Now, she's asking me to completely redo my backyard, install a temporary dance floor, rent an elaborate tent with chandeliers, bring in extra bathrooms, and basically turn it into a venue-level setup. She said that if I don't do this, she'll have to cancel my place entirely and rent a venue. She also added that I need to cover part of the cost, as it affects my property and my hosting duties. I was completely taken aback. I told her that I could not commit to spending thousands of dollars on temporary modifications to my property, especially since I never agreed to host a formal wedding. I explained that while I'm happy to have people over and host casual gatherings, what she's asking is basically renting a commercial venue, which is not something I can afford or am comfortable with. I suggested alternative solutions. She could rent a nearby community hall, have the party at a restaurant, or even scale down the backyard wedding to what we originally planned. I even offered to help coordinate logistics and help with setup, as I want her day to be special, but she kept insisting that it has to be at my house exactly like the Pinterest board. At this point, she started accusing me of being selfish and unsupportive. She said that because I have a bigger house than her and my backyard is perfect for the aesthetic, it's my responsibility to make it work. She also implied that if I refused, it would show that I don't love her and don't care about family. My parents have now gotten involved. They're pressuring me to just make it work because it's Claire's big day, and they keep saying things like, you don't have to pay for everything, just let her do her thing, and she's not asking for much, it's just a tent and some fancy rentals. I feel like no one is taking my side. I tried reasoning with them, explaining that hosting a commercial-style wedding is not the same as a casual backyard gathering. It involves insurance, liability, potential damage to the property, and thousands of dollars in rentals and labor. I also mentioned that I feel this is completely out of my control and outside the scope of what I originally agreed to. My parents just said I'm being dramatic and that Claire will never forgive me if I don't let her have her dream wedding at my house. Now, the situation has escalated. Claire told me she's going to cut me out of the wedding entirely if I don't comply. She said she doesn't want a wedding at a venue because it won't feel personal enough, and she's framing it as if I'm choosing my comfort over her happiness. I try to suggest compromise after compromise, smaller tents, fewer rentals, etc., but she refused. She says that if I truly cared about her, I would do everything in my power to make it happen. I'm feeling really stressed and guilty, but I also feel that this demand is unreasonable and unfair. I'm not opposed to hosting a wedding in general, but what she's asking is more than I can reasonably manage financially or logistically. I don't want to completely ruin her day, but I also don't want to go into debt or risk damaging my home. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding under these new conditions? I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for setting boundaries, but my parents and sister seem to think I'm being petty. Character count, 6,200 for if you want. I can also write a follow-up version with more twists and drama, which tends to get higher engagement on Reddit. It would push closer to 7,000 characters. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding because of a family feud that started years ago. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 28F, up until a few years ago when complicated and long-standing family feuds started resurfacing. My family isn't exactly perfect, but we've managed to stay somewhat functional for the most part. The issue began when my mom, who has a history of favoritism, made it very clear she thought Emma was her golden child, and I was always the problem child. For years, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was typical family dynamics, but things got worse when it came to money and attention. A couple of years ago, my sister decided to buy her first house. She asked my parents for help, and they gave her a large sum as a gift. I had also been planning to buy a house around the same time and asked for some assistance, and my parents offered nothing. When I expressed my frustration, they told me I was being ungrateful and that I should be happy my sister was doing well. The way they handled this situation really hurt me, and I realized there was no fair ground for me in my family. Fast forward to last year, my sister got engaged. I was genuinely happy for her and congratulated her, but when she started talking about the wedding, I noticed a pattern. She kept saying things like, "Mom will do most of the planning, so you don't need to worry, and we want everything to be perfect, just like I imagined." At first, I thought I was just overthinking, but then she started sending me lists of tasks she assumed I'd handle, like picking a caterer, organizing the guest list, and even handling certain family conflicts without ever asking if I wanted to be involved. I felt like she was delegating responsibilities rather than including me in meaningful ways. About 3 months ago, she sat me down and basically asked me to host the wedding at my house. I live in a relatively small suburban home, but I was shocked she even considered it. I told her honestly that my house wouldn't accommodate such a large event, and also that given our family history, I wasn't comfortable being in charge of hosting such a major event. She immediately became upset and started crying, saying, "I can't believe you won't support me. Everyone else in the family is helping, and you're being selfish." I tried to explain my perspective, emphasizing that hosting a wedding isn't a small favor and that emotionally, I didn't feel capable of taking on such a responsibility given our past conflicts. She called me cold and unloving, and the conversation ended with her storming out. Since then, things have only escalated. My parents called me and accused me of destroying their daughter's special day and told me I was being dramatic. My sister has been posting on social media about all the preparations and tagging everyone in the family except me, which makes me feel even more excluded. Some of our mutual friends have reached out, trying to mediate, but honestly, I don't see a path to reconciliation right now without boundaries. My concern is that I've now become the villain in everyone's eyes. Friends and extended family have subtly suggested that I should just put aside our differences for one day, but I genuinely feel that being forced to host the wedding would cause me immense stress and resentment, which isn't fair to anyone. I've offered to help in smaller ways that don't involve hosting, like helping with vendor research or crafting decorations, but apparently that's not enough. To make things more complicated, Emma has a fiancé, James, who I've always gotten along with, and he's been trying to act as a mediator. He's told me that hosting the wedding would show family unity and that I'd regret not helping. I understand his point, but I can't shake the feeling that the request isn't about unity, but rather about convenience. Hosting the wedding at my house would relieve my parents and sister of a lot of logistical stress, and it feels like I'm being punished for standing my ground. A few of my coworkers also weigh in occasionally, saying things like, "It's just one day, you'll survive," which I know is meant to be comforting, but honestly, just makes me feel guilty. I'm genuinely torn because I want my sister to have a wonderful day, but I also feel like my limits and past experiences are being ignored. I've been reflecting on whether I'm overreacting or if I'm right to prioritize my emotional well-being. At this point, the wedding is a few months away, and I've made it clear multiple times that I cannot host, though I will contribute in other ways. My sister has started refusing to talk to me, and my parents have been pressuring me more and more. Part of me wonders if I should just agree to host to keep the peace, but I also fear that doing so will just deepen old resentments and cause long-term harm to our relationship. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding because of our family history and my own emotional boundaries? Or should I just put aside my feelings for one day and host the event to avoid making me the villain in my family's eyes? I just want to do the right thing without sacrificing my mental health. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move into my house after he broke up with her. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emma, 28F. We grew up in a small town, and after college, I moved back home to care for our aging parents. Over the years, I built a decent life here, stable job, close friends, and I live in a moderately sized 3-bedroom house that my parents helped me buy. Emma has bounced around a bit, living in different cities for work and relationships, and I've always tried to support her whenever she needed a place to crash or a temporary setup while she figured things out. About a year ago, Emma started dating a guy named Ryan, 30M. From the beginning, I liked him. He seemed kind, ambitious, and genuinely cared for Emma. They were serious pretty quickly, and after 6 months, they decided to move in together. They found a small apartment nearby, and everything seemed fine. Things started getting complicated a few months ago. Ryan lost his job due to downsizing, and the couple began fighting about money. Emma's frustration was understandable, and she often vented to me about it. I tried to remain neutral, offering support to both of them, but without taking sides. Around that same time, Emma mentioned that Ryan had expressed concerns about long-term stability. He supposedly wanted more freedom and wasn't sure about getting married or committing fully. Emma was upset, but I just listened and encouraged her to talk things through. Last month, everything blew up. Ryan decided he didn't want to be with Emma anymore. He told her he needed a fresh start alone and was moving out immediately. Emma was devastated, of course, and she called me in tears, asking if she could stay at my house while she figured things out. I said yes, and she moved in temporarily. I was happy to help her, even though it made my schedule and space more complicated. Here's where it gets messy. The day after Ryan moved out, he called Emma. She answered and, naturally, started crying on the phone. Ryan, for reasons I still don't understand, asked if he could come stay at my house for a few days while he figured out where to live. Emma, in her emotional state, said yes without asking me first. He showed up the next day with a few bags, and I was caught completely off guard. I told him firmly that he could not stay at my house. I explained that this is Emma's temporary safe space, not a hotel for him, and that he should find a place to stay on his own. Ryan got defensive, saying I was being cold and unreasonable. He said he thought it would be easier to patch things up if he was around, implying that staying with Emma and me would somehow make the breakup less painful. I reiterated that my home is not available for him under any circumstances, and he left after a heated argument. Emma was upset with me. She argued that I was being harsh and that Ryan doesn't have anywhere else to go right now. She also said that since I've helped her in the past, I should extend the same courtesy to him. I told her that the circumstances are completely different. Emma is my sister. Ryan is her ex who ended things, and that I'm under no obligation to make him comfortable after he caused her pain. I also mentioned that my house isn't big enough to accommodate another adult comfortably for an indefinite period, and I have responsibilities and routines that I cannot disrupt for someone I barely know. Emma and Ryan tried to guilt-trip me for a few days, but I stood my ground. Emma ended up finding a short-term rental and moved in there. Ryan was angry and made passive-aggressive comments on social media about people being selfish. Meanwhile, my friends and co-workers who know the situation are split. Some say I was right to protect my home and boundaries, while others think I overreacted and should have at least offered him a place for a night or two. The tension between Emma and me has been growing. She keeps bringing up Ryan in conversations and making remarks about how I can't even be nice for one person's sake. She's also suggested that I'm prioritizing my comfort over family, which really hurt because I've spent so much of my life supporting her and our parents. Part of me wonders if I could have been more flexible and just let him stay for a very short period, but the thought of having someone who recently hurt my sister in my house, possibly creating drama, felt wrong. I also keep thinking about the times I helped Emma when she was struggling, and I feel like that generosity shouldn't extend automatically to someone who caused her harm. Now, my sister isn't speaking to me as much, and I'm worried our relationship might be permanently damaged. I never intended to hurt her, and I feel confident that I made a reasonable decision to protect my space and maintain boundaries. But at the same time, seeing her upset makes me question whether I could have handled it differently. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my sister's ex stay at my house after their breakup. Character count, 6,321. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay at my house after he got out of rehab. So I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger brother, Jason, 28M, has had a long history of substance abuse. Over the years, it's been a roller coaster of rehab stints, arrests, and family interventions. I've helped him financially when I could, co-sign leases for him, and even let him live with me during a particularly rough patch. But it always seemed like I was enabling him more than actually helping him. A few months ago, Jason completed a 90-day inpatient rehab program. My parents live about an hour away, and they wanted him to stay with them for a while after leaving rehab to ensure he had a stable environment. I live alone in a small apartment, work full-time, and have a very structured routine. I also have a cat, and my apartment isn't really set up for someone who might need 24/7 care or supervision. A week after his discharge, Jason called me and said he didn't want to stay with our parents. According to him, my parents are overbearing and don't understand recovery, and he wanted to stay with me because he trusts me. I was taken aback because, while I do care about him, I didn't think my apartment was the right environment for someone just coming out of rehab. I tried explaining this to him gently. I told him I didn't have the space, the emotional bandwidth, or the resources to help him transition safely. I suggested that he continue staying with our parents for at least a month while he goes to outpatient therapy and support groups. Jason got very defensive. He accused me of not supporting him, of being selfish, and of throwing him out when he needs me most. He said he knew I cared about him, but that I always choose my comfort over his well-being. I tried to reason with him, saying that supporting him sometimes means setting boundaries and that I could help in other ways, driving him to meetings, checking in daily, or helping him find a therapist, but not hosting him in my apartment. He refused to listen. After our conversation, Jason sent me a group message including my parents, saying that I was abandoning him and that he didn't feel safe around me anymore. My parents called me furious, saying I was being cruel and that a family should always make room for each other in times of need. I reminded them of the multiple times I've supported Jason, including letting him live with me for 6 months during one of his relapses. I told them that this is about my limits, not about lack of love. Things escalated when Jason showed up at my apartment unannounced the next day. He was pleading and crying, telling me he had nowhere else to go. I held my ground and told him I couldn't let him stay. He stormed out, saying he would never forgive me and that I was the worst sister in the world. Since then, my parents have been giving me the cold shoulder and occasionally sending me passive-aggressive texts. They argue that I should be prioritizing family over comfort and that Jason is fragile after rehab, and I'm putting him at risk emotionally by not letting him stay. I understand their point, but I also feel like I have to protect my mental health and boundaries. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to set boundaries, especially given my past experiences with Jason relapsing while living with me. Others say family comes first and that I should have found a way to make it work, even if inconvenient. I'm starting to feel guilty because my brother is clearly struggling and I know he's vulnerable right now. On the other hand, I know that having him live with me might end up in a toxic cycle that could hurt both of us. I even considered renting a cheap Airbnb for him temporarily, but I don't think that would solve the underlying issues, and I can't afford to pay for it indefinitely. So, Reddit. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my brother stay at my apartment after rehab? I feel like I'm doing the responsible thing for both of us, but I can't shake the feeling that maybe I'm being cold or selfish. Some additional context that might matter. My apartment is a one-bedroom, so privacy is nearly impossible. Jason has a history of relapsing when he stays with me because I tend to give in when he begs. I do still want to support him, just not under my roof. My parents are well off and have more space, but apparently Jason doesn't like staying there because of their strict rules around meals, curfew, and phone use. I really don't want to hurt my family, but I also don't want to sabotage my own stability or risk enabling him. I feel like I've reached a crossroads where any decision will upset someone. I'm torn, and I need an outsider perspective. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she intentionally destroyed my property because she felt left out. So this is going to be long, and I really need outside perspective because my family is split down the middle on this. I, 28F, have a younger sister, 25F, who has always been a little dramatic and prone to feeling like the world is out to get her. Growing up, it was mostly harmless, but as adults, it's become increasingly stressful. My sister, let's call her Jenna, has always been jealous of me for no real reason, but it came to a head recently, and now my family is furious with me. A few months ago, I bought a new car. It's not an extravagant luxury car by any means, but it's brand new, reliable, and something I saved for a long time. I was incredibly proud of it because it represented my hard work. Naturally, I wanted to share the excitement with my family, so I invited them over for a little reveal dinner. Everyone came, and they were genuinely happy for me, except Jenna. She was quiet the whole evening, which I didn't think much of at the time because she's often quiet when she's tired or stressed. Fast forward 2 weeks, I get a call from my neighbor saying that my car alarm has been going off for the past hour. I rush outside and find my car scratched all along the side. The mirror is broken, and someone spray-painted "loser" on the hood. I was in absolute shock. I immediately called my parents to tell them, and of course they were horrified. I filed a police report, and thankfully my neighbor's security cameras caught the whole thing. To my dismay, the footage clearly showed Jenna crouched by my car, spray paint can in hand, looking triumphant. I confronted her immediately. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said that she felt left out of my success and wanted to make sure I knew how it felt to have something I love ruined. She insisted she wasn't trying to hurt me personally, but that she needed balance in the universe. I was, understandably, furious. I couldn't believe someone I grew up with, someone who knows how hard I worked, would do this. Here's where it gets messy. Jenna's logic is that because she's feeling bad about herself, I should somehow fix it for her. She demanded that I pay for the repairs myself and forgive her without any consequences because she didn't mean it that way. I refused. I told her that intentional property damage is not acceptable under any circumstances, and I would not be covering her mess. My parents were split. My dad thinks I'm right, but worries about escalating family tension. My mom, however, has gone full, "Oh, she's your sister. You should forgive her" mode. She keeps calling me, saying I'm being too harsh, that Jenna is clearly struggling, and that I need to help her move past this. My friends all agree with me, saying this is not okay and that forgiving doesn't mean paying for the damages. But my parents are painting me as the villain, and it's putting me in an incredibly uncomfortable position. Jenna has since moved back home temporarily because she's figuring herself out after quitting her job. Every day, she passive-aggressively brings up the car incident, implying that I'm cruel or heartless. She's also started leaving reminders around the house, like spray-painting little hearts on her side of the driveway, or sending me texts saying, "Hope you're not still mad about the car, sis." I've kept my distance as much as possible, but it's hard because I live with my parents, and they keep expecting me to engage and act like everything is fine. I try to set boundaries. I told Jenna that until she apologizes formally and makes restitution for the car, I don't want to have a normal sibling relationship with her. I even offered that she could pay half of the repair costs if she wanted things to return to normal, but she refuses. She insists that her feelings are more important than my property and that I'm being petty. I'm genuinely torn because my parents are pressuring me, and I hate seeing Jenna upset, but at the same time, I feel like giving in would completely undermine my sense of justice. I also worry about what message it sends to my younger cousin, who is watching all of this, about accountability and respect. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to forgive my sister without her making amends for intentionally destroying my car. I feel like I'm in the right here, but my family's reactions have made me question if I'm overreacting. I want to emphasize, this isn't about her feeling sad or struggling with life. I understand everyone has bad days. This is about someone deliberately damaging someone else's property and then expecting forgiveness without consequences. I just don't know if I'm supposed to rise above for the sake of family peace or stand my ground and risk my relationship with my parents and sister. I would appreciate any perspective. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 28F, though our relationship has had its ups and downs. We grew up in a middle-class household. Our parents were very involved in everything, and I've always felt a sense of responsibility toward her, even now as adults. I have a stable job, I own my own apartment, and for the most part, I'm considered reliable and generous by my friends and family. Recently, Emily got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Dan. Initially, I was thrilled for them, and I offered to help with wedding planning in any way I could. I've always enjoyed planning events, and I thought it would be fun to help her make the day perfect. I didn't offer to pay for anything at first. I just wanted to help, as I genuinely wanted to be part of this milestone in her life. However, from the very beginning, Emily made it clear she didn't want me involved. She told me she and Dan had a vision for the wedding and that it was going to be intimate and very specific. I didn't press the issue because I wanted her to be happy, but I admit I was hurt. I had expected to have a more active role as her older sister. As the months went on, she began sending me texts with very specific instructions about what she wanted me to do. She wanted me to RSVP to her bridal shower, buy a gift, and even help with things like assembling invitations. Then she started dropping hints about financial contributions. She mentioned that the wedding budget was tight and asked if I could chip in for a portion of the venue, the decorations, or the catering. At first, I was confused. I had not been involved in any decisions, yet she was asking me to fund things. I politely told her I wasn't comfortable paying for anything, especially since I hadn't been part of the planning. She got upset, saying I was being selfish and not supportive. I tried explaining my perspective. I would support her emotionally, attend the events, and help in ways that didn't involve giving money, but she wasn't hearing it. The tension came to a head a few weeks ago. Emily sent me a message detailing all the expenses she expected me to cover. It included things like part of the wedding cake, the floral arrangements, and even the photographer's travel costs. She said that because I was her sister, contributing was the right thing to do. I responded calmly that I was happy to celebrate her wedding and help in ways that didn't involve paying for the event. Her response was a long, emotional message about family, obligation, and how disappointed she was in me. She accused me of being jealous and said that if I didn't contribute financially, I shouldn't expect to have any real role in the wedding. At this point, I realized she was trying to manipulate me emotionally, and I told her I would not be sending any money. We haven't spoken much since then. Our parents are caught in the middle. They think I should compromise and give some money, but I feel that doing so would set a precedent where my contributions are expected and not appreciated. I've offered to help in other ways, like helping set up for the wedding, hosting the bachelorette party in my apartment, or helping with transportation logistics, but she declined everything. Last night, Emily called me, crying and yelling, saying that I'm ruining her wedding and that I don't care about her happiness. She said our parents are disappointed in me and that our family thinks I'm being unreasonable. I tried to stay calm and reiterated my stance. I want to support her, but I won't pay for things I had no say in. She ended the call screaming at me, and I just hung up. Now, I'm hearing from mutual friends that Emily is telling people I refuse to pay for her wedding out of spite and that I don't care about family. I feel terrible about the idea that she's portraying me as the villain, but at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that this is unfair. I feel like I've been put in a position where no matter what I do, I'll be seen as the bad guy. I know weddings are expensive and stressful, But I also feel strongly that family members should not be obligated to finance someone else's big day, especially if they haven't been included in planning. I love my sister, but I can't let guilt or pressure force me to give money I don't want to give. I've tried reasoning calmly and offering other forms of support, but Emily refuses anything that doesn't involve me writing a check. Our parents are frustrated with me. Emily is furious, and I'm feeling extremely guilty and isolated. So, Reddit, AITA, for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning and tried to guilt me into giving money. AITA for refusing to let my in-laws dictate how I raise my child, even though it caused a huge family rift. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, Daniel, 34M, for 6 years. We have a daughter, Sophie, who just turned 3. Daniel and I have always tried to parent in a way that we believe is best for our child, which includes having a consistent routine, a mostly organic diet, limited screen time, and encouraging independent play. This has worked well for us so far, and Sophie is a happy, healthy, and energetic little kid. The problem started when Daniel's parents, particularly his mother, came to stay with us for a week during the summer. They hadn't spent much time with Sophie since she was a baby, and from the start, it became clear that they wanted to show us how things should be done. Initially, it was little things, feeding her candy when she asked for it, letting her stay up past bedtime because it's a vacation, and insisting that Sophie watch hours of cartoons because all kids love TV. I tried to be diplomatic, saying things like, "We usually stick to our routine, but maybe a little treat is okay." Daniel agreed with me privately, but he didn't want to upset his parents, so he often let things slide. Things escalated on the third day. My mother-in-law decided she wanted to give Sophie a special surprise and took her out to a local toy store without asking me. Sophie came home with a bag full of sugary snacks, cheap plastic toys, and a huge stuffed animal. I was furious because she had just eaten lunch, and I didn't want her to get used to getting whatever she wanted whenever she demanded it. I confronted my mother-in-law gently, saying that I appreciated her wanting to treat Sophie, but we have rules for a reason, and we can't let her get spoiled. She scoffed and said, "You're just too controlling. Kids should have fun while they're young. You're going to ruin her if you don't lighten up." At this point, Daniel started to get defensive. He said that his mother is just trying to bond with our daughter and that I was overreacting. I explained that it wasn't about her spending time with Sophie, it was about boundaries. Sophie needs consistency, and letting her do whatever she wants when someone is here undermines all the work we've done. Daniel sighed and walked away, leaving me to handle his mother's passive-aggressive comments for the rest of the evening. The next day, things got worse. My mother-in-law decided that she knew better than me about Sophie's diet. She tried to make her a huge breakfast of pancakes loaded with syrup, bacon, and whipped cream, ignoring my instructions for a healthier meal. I calmly told her that Sophie already ate breakfast and that we could have a snack later, but she insisted that children need a big breakfast to grow and that I was too uptight. I finally snapped and said, "This isn't about being uptight. This is about Sophie's health. If you can't respect our rules, you can't decide what she eats." My voice was louder than I intended, and I could tell she was offended. Daniel got involved again, trying to mediate, but he ended up saying something like, "Mom, maybe you could just follow their rules while you're here." His mother was visibly upset, and the atmosphere became tense. She spent the rest of the visit making subtle jabs about how I was so controlling and how Daniel should be raising our child in a fun way. By the last day of their visit, Daniel and I had a huge argument. He accused me of being unreasonable and said that I embarrassed him in front of his parents. I argued back, saying that I wasn't going to let Sophie develop bad habits just because his parents wanted to indulge her. We ended up barely speaking for a few hours, and when they left, his mother gave me a pointed glare and said, "Good luck keeping her as disciplined as you think you can." Since then, Daniel has been distant. He says he feels caught between his mother and me and doesn't want to start a lifelong battle with her. His mother has sent multiple texts saying that I'm too controlling and that I should let the child have fun and stop being so serious all the time. My own parents have told me I did the right thing, but Daniel's side of the family is extremely upset, and he keeps hinting that maybe I went too far. I honestly feel like I was just protecting my child and trying to maintain a consistent routine. I've never tried to exclude Daniel's parents from Sophie's life, and I've always encouraged them to bond with her, but I can't compromise on health, discipline, and boundaries. I also feel like Daniel should have my back, rather than trying to smooth things over at my expense. My husband and I are now walking on eggshells. Every time there's a family gathering, I feel tension and fear another clash. I keep questioning myself, wondering if I really was too harsh or if I'm right to stick to my principles. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my in-laws dictate how I raise my child, even though it has caused a rift in the family. Character count, 6,438. If you want, I can draft an even longer, more intricate version with extra subplots and tension that hits closer to 7,000 characters while keeping the same Reddit viral style. It would feel like one of the stories that sparks massive discussion. Do you want me to do that? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.